Kansas State does it again. This winning streak is magical. How long can they keep this going? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers, and we have an exciting live reaction show to talk about today. Joined with me, Jeff Burkhart. You can find him on Twitter at Jeff_Burkhart, the host of the College and Kimbo podcast, and we are going to get into Kansas State taking down Arizona 73-70, extending the winning streak and doing just amazing things. Now with a winning record in the Big 12 Conference. Did you expect us to even get to this point? I mean, this is where we're at right now, right? We're at the point where we had this crazy non-conference just slump. Now we are on a 6-game winning streak, but 7 wins in the conference, 13-11. If I remember correctly, something came out just a couple days ago or just earlier today, actually. We're now in consideration for March Madness, according to Bracketology, Jeff. My God. And with another win against a ranked opponent, this team is now 4-5 in quad 1 games this year. Really impressive by this squad. What's your overall take from this one? Are they all going to feel this way? Am I going to have a heart attack feeling or chest pain? What is going on? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
It's remarkable. Like I hand up, I had this team dead and buried many weeks ago. The Houston game where I just kind of like, I don't know if they're ever gonna to galvanize and get this ship righted. But it's just remarkable the 180 that they've made. And again, this game though, I just looking at it coming on the heels of KU, in a game in particular against KU where he shot it so well, just the basket just seemed like it was a mile wide and everything was going down against the Jayhawks that day. Arizona, one of the top defenses in terms of points per possession, to one of the top scoring defenses, and also they're the top scoring team in the Big 12. The only thing that gave me pause was like, well, maybe they're looking ahead to that Houston game that's coming up here in a couple of days. And that was where I was thinking maybe we could catch them a little sleepy coming into this game in Manhattan, and we might have a chance to jump up and bite them. And I don't really think that was a huge factor. I don't think the look ahead was there. I just think K-State played extremely well defensively. They while they did get out rebounded in this one, it seemed like they did a good job of not giving Arizona a lot of second chance opportunities. That was really critical in my eyes. It just seemed like Arizona just had a lot of cold streaks where they were going 3, 4, 5 minutes without without making any shots, and K-State was cleaning up the glass and limiting it second chance opportunities. Again, it's there. These games too, in the midst of the streak, they've all had these very unique feels. You know, there's been some blowouts, there's been some nail biters. This obviously goes into the latter category there. Yeah. But yeah, this team, I think there's just this very palpable belief right now. Like they all understand roles, assignments, responsibilities. They believe in each other. They trust each other. Tang trusts the group that's on the floor at any given moment. And you're just seeing, again, the byproduct of guys investing and buying in. And, you know, once that first win comes, things just have started to snowball, and this team has just played with more and more confidence. And I think that kind of helped carry the day. There was a moment later in the late stage in the second half where things kind of looked bleak. Arizona had gone on that 10-2 run to take the lead, and you just gone on that cold stretch. You thought that you might be dead in the water there, but then Doug comes up with a couple of big back-to-back buckets to get you the lead. And that obviously helped lift you and elevate you to another win, 5-2 now against ranked teams. Like the resume is there for this team. It's crazy. It's just crazy. I can't say anything else.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah, my 2-year-old daughter is getting very used to me screaming at the TV over sports, that she's starting to cheer now too. She's not getting scared anymore, so I guess that's a plus side. But most of those yelling and screaming these days have been about Doug McDaniel and his crazy shot selections. And I mean, it's just amazing that he finds a way to get those to fall. I mean, obviously, easily the player of the game in this one. He goes 24 points, 3 assists, 4 rebounds, and 5 steals. He had 3 of those in the first half. He was amazing in this one, and he absolutely crushes it. I see we got some comments coming in. Tom Nichols, I mean, what you said, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm thinking. That bank shot game was so impressive. I wasn't a big fan of the commentary on this one. I was just kind of annoyed. I think I've been annoyed of ESPN Plus for quite some time now. But he said something about one of them saying the geometry of Doug McDaniel's shots are just absolutely incredible. And I couldn't agree more. It was just absolutely incredible. Jake Stewart coming in saying, between the football team and the basketball team, I've easily lost 15 years of my life. Good win, though. We can control our own destiny now. You are not wrong. I mean, inconsideration might be changing into a first out maybe right now. I think with this win now, I think you move up into a possibility of a first 4 out. I mean, dare I say that be that? I mean, it's crazy, right? And then I got something else from JJH saying, love the way this group has figured it out and come together. So glad of these young men. Isn't it crazy that we're in this moment now, Jeff, where we get to say how proud we are of this team, because we were not even remotely close to thinking that way earlier on this year after non-conference, really after the first 4 or 5 games in Big 12 play. This team there was a large amount of Kansas State fans across social media, across podcasting, calling for the firing of Tang. I definitely criticized the coaching and the players. I wasn't as far as saying I wanted to fire the coaching staff, but it was definitely towards criticism, and I'm not afraid to eat my shorts on this one. This team has definitely turned it around. Jerome Tang definitely has found a way to get this team to buy in. All those buzzwords that we've continued to talk about in this season heading up into right now, this moment, has paid off. And although it's only a 13-11 record, they have a winning record in the toughest conference in college basketball. If you think otherwise, debate a door, please. But I really think that this is a team that can make a magical run now. After what they have done over these past couple games against Iowa State, against Kansas, and now against Arizona, this team is very special. And it is very exciting to see right now where they're playing their best basketball in the middle of February, heading into a well-alive opportunity for March Madness, Jeff.
Yeah, and as I said, I think the resume, like there's going to be very few teams that are on the bubble that have as many quality wins as Kansas State is going to have. So now, and honestly, I went into this week trying not to be a downer by any stretch, but I was looking at that. BYU is going to be a tough out in Provo. That was going to be a tough game, and I was just thinking, even if they just split this week, you give yourself a little bit. You would still have the bandwidth, I think, to make a run as long as you take care of the teams that are beneath you in the standings, which pretty much every game the rest of the way, with the exception of Iowa State at the tail end of the season, you're going to be facing teams that you've either already beaten or you're going to be favored to beat. So as long as you can take care of those games, and a split this week, I think would be fine. But I think with the way that this team is playing, there's a supreme amount of confidence there. And again, on a night too where you don't really have your fastball, you shoot 45% of the game, not a great clip there, but the 1 for 19 from 3, obviously, if you knock down a couple of those, you're not nearly as nervous about the final few seconds as you were today. But again, just going to show that even against some of the best teams in the country, and again, Arizona has been, if there's a hotter team than Kansas State in the Big 12, it was Arizona. And Kansas State, once again, has just found a way to get it done against a superior team and beat Arizona in different way. Like, this is a team, Arizona doesn't allow teams to get on the free throw line. K-State got 26 cracks at the free throw line. K-State points in the paint against a very long team that has some great size and doesn't really allow a whole very high 2-point percentage. K-State racked up 46 points in the paint. Again, they are playing like a tournament team, and just it's a question now, like, can they, the margin for error is still fairly small, but man, can they just keep this momentum rolling, because they're on this crazy heater. And I know I'm gonna keep using that expression, but that's just what this is. They are finding different ways to do it. Different guys are excelling, different guys are knocking down shots in high leverage moments. It's been so fun to see, so refreshing from where we were again just a few weeks ago.
Where we are sitting right now after defeating Arizona, who was battling Houston as one of the best teams in the conference before this game. Now they're going to be a game back because they're now 11-2 in conference. We just handed them their second loss in conference. That's it. They had a tough non-conference schedule as well, but they've had a tough time in non-conference, I should say, but they really stepped it up in Big 12 play. The way we're playing right now, I'm not afraid to think differently, to think that we might play Houston differently. I think there would be a way stronger chance of us taking a game against Houston, especially in Manhattan, if we played them right now. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say we would beat them because Houston is a very good team. We saw that just a few weeks ago. But if we had a chance, like if we played Houston tonight instead of how we played Arizona, I would feel really good about it. Although those threes were a big problem, as you mentioned, we also saw it in the chat as well. 1 of 19 for shooting threes. When you usually average around 9 or 10 makes a game, especially from Brennan Hawson. We got him for 0 for 4. His only points came from inside the 3-point line, which is wild to think of from a guy that's your specialist outside the 3-point line. They weren't falling for either team. I mean, overall, I think only 3 3-pointers fell between all teams. It was just absolutely unreal. But Kansas State found a way to adjust. They found a way to win. And a lot of that came from the 14 steals from Kansas State and capitalizing off those points off turnovers. We got a lot of comments coming in. We got a lot of people watching. Thanks so much for listening for this live reaction, even though it's late night, Kansas State After Dark. We're doing that right here on Locked On Kansas State. We got plenty more to talk about in this one, and we want to look ahead as well. We're going to do that all here, right on Locked On Kansas State. Well, after the holiday hustle, there is nothing like getting your home a little TLC. I've always found that decluttering and refreshing my space always helps me get back into the routine. So whether you're tidying up or clearing out or just want to give this space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture for a huge selection that makes it easier to find pieces that fits my style and my budget. My favorite part is the free and hassle-free delivery, even with larger items. I'm looking for a new couch, so that is a perfect addition to get that free delivery. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. So give your home a refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. We are breaking down Kansas State taking down number 13 ranked Arizona 73-70 in a wild one. Another cardiac Wildcats moment, if you will. And since it was Wildcats versus Wildcats, it was the good ones that won this one. And it was an insane matchup. It came down to the very end yet again. And before we continue to get on this, I think I have to talk about, in my opinion, Jeff, I think the elephant in the room was there was a lot of questionable calls by the Big 12 referees in this one. And I feel like that's a growing narrative that is making this conference look pretty bad overall. And yet again, it happens again. There were some really rough calls right from the bat. Was a goaltending in the first half that was taken away from Kansas State. It actually worked in the favor of the Wildcats. After that happened, they had a nice resurgence, and then they went on a 13-0 run to end the half, actually stopped Arizona from scoring almost for the last 4 minutes of the half, heading into halftime. But there were some really interesting calls, really tough calls, some of them that went against Kansas State and some that went against Arizona. What was your take on this? And I don't want to, I'm not afraid to nitpick the refs because that's their job, but this is a tough one for them. I really didn't like how they officiated this one.
No, I didn't either. There were stretches where they were letting a lot of contact go underneath the basket, and you're seeing guys' bodies hitting the deck all over the place, going for rebounds, and it was just it was a physical game. Don't get me wrong; guys were fighting and scrapping, trying to get loose ball. Second chance points were at a premium today. And again, you talked about the goaltending call and G Brew in the comments there, saying that did spur what was honestly a pretty pivotal run by Kansas State to close out that half. There was the wonky over and back violation and everything, and whether or not there was going to be a shot clock reset on the possession that was very obviously critical for Kansas State, which K-State ended up getting the ball back down 62-60. Doug McDaniel again pulls up, hits a bank shot like it's 1996. Love that. But yeah, collectively though, the officials were just very inconsistent, very erratic today. That crew was just, you have a bad day at the office. And again, I'm not going to complain too much when you win the game. I mean, K-State lost this game. I would have had a fair amount of gripes, but it was not when you're going to be filling out your evaluation post game, you're probably going to have some pretty colorful comments about this, because I think, again, I can deal if you're going to let guys play, then let them play, but you can't just pick random stretches to call, little touch fouls here and there. And like, I always say, just be consistent, call it on both ends of the floor. If it's going to be physical, let it be physical, but can't make some of the mistakes that they were making today, and having to do the reviews and all the things that they ended up having to do. This was a forgettable outing by this crew, no doubt about it.
Yeah, there was multiple times where they called, stoppage for reviews, and it took away either momentum for Kansas State, or it just either took away an entire possession for them, like that goaltending I mentioned earlier. But the one in the second half as well, where they were trying to figure out if Arizona actually had possession of the ball, where we had a wide open shot that we actually made, and then you had to take that away, and you wound up having to take the inbound. It changes momentum for that part of that second half, and I think it helped Arizona kind of stay in this one. And that wasn't the only opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that this game was completely against Kansas State by any means. I'm not saying that, but it just was just not a great overall performance by the referees. That's as far as I want to get in that one. Hey, Cole makes a very good point here. The underrated key that will help us get to the tourney, bench production from guys like CJ Jones and Moby. Moby only had 2 points in this one, right? But they were probably the biggest 2 points of his collegiate career so far. They were insane. That dunk was absolutely incredible. The atmosphere, I can only imagine what it felt like in the stands. I mean, absolutely unreal. Now, he missed the free throw right after. That would have been a nice dagger if you would have hit that free throw. Kansas State only 61.5% from the charity strike. That's got to improve as well. You want to talk about tourney things if we're going to get the nitpicking process. And, that's a good problem to have, that we're talking nitpicking right now since we're on a nice winning streak, but the free throws have to definitely improve. CJ Jones, obviously doing a great thing too. 10 points. He had 4 rebounds. Really good job. David Gasson, though, I got to talk about Gasson. We talked about the refs and talk about the foul troubles. He's the guy that fouled out. It's the first time all season he fouled out. He did it with 1:30 left to go. Finished with 16 points, had 7 rebounds. And I think he was probably the one that faced the most criticism from the refs in this one. There was multiple times where he was down on the floor dealing with, ailing just woes of being elbowed or poked in the eye. It felt like Gasson was just an absolute warrior in this one. And unfortunately, he wound up being fouled out of this one. But they found a way to win. Before I get into the other part, let's get to the final play of the game. The inbound from Arizona, where Doug McDaniel caught that steal. Take me through your thought process, because I was standing up. I couldn't even sit down. I was so nervous. When I get to these points where the game is on crunch time, I just can't sit down. I have to watch this one. And when he got that steal at half court, there was the opportunity where it could have been a backcourt violation. Thankfully, they called the foul and they continue on. But what was your thought process there? Because I was definitely on my feet. There's no doubt about it.
Kind of an interesting call there from Tommy Lloyd, because they had a little bit more time than I think that. I don't know if he maybe saw something different or whatnot, but they had enough
6
time
seconds, right?
Yeah, 6 seconds. So you've got plenty of time to get a running start if you're taking the inbounds pass and get it up the floor, and you have enough time to try and run a quick set a screen, and get somebody at least a somewhat clean look to just immediately go to the Hail Mary like that. Like, yeah, if there's 2-3 seconds, yeah, I get that, but you had a lot more time to do something there. So that again was just very peculiar from Tommy Lloyd. But all's well that ends well for Kansas State. At the end of the day, Doug McDaniel again, the catalyst for Kansas State. And you talked about David Gasson as well. Both of those guys really owned the day for the Wildcats. I think Doug in the second half had his moments where he picked up the team, obviously making those critical shots to get the Wildcats back ahead in the late stages of the game. But there was that lull where Kansas State was just really struggling. Hausen wasn't hitting anything. Coleman Hawkins had a horrible night. No offense to him. I know he wasn't having much success from the outside. He seemed like maybe a little worn out from a couple days prior. A lot of those shots were flat, coming up short and whatnot. But David Gasson picked the team up obviously in a big way, and Coleman did a great job finding him on a couple of interior passes there. So again, those two were huge, and to bring it back to Kansas State. But the play we talked about though, that put it all, that ultimately helped the Wildcats get on top was Doug stealing. Just a very apropos way to end that game from him ending up with 5 steals. And we also talked about Moby as well. 3 steals in just 14 minutes for him. Great job by Kansas State. This is obviously the high water mark in terms of the number of steals allowed. I know that's not necessarily a stat that's tracked, but the number of times a team generates those steals, like that's crazy number to see from Kansas State.
Yeah, really the biggest thing I just want to see is them improve from the free throw line when they actually get there, because if you get 26 attempts, I want to at least get 20 of those made. 16 for 26, got to get a little more there just to help you get that cushion. And if you can find a way to do that, you're getting the opportunities. Now capitalize on that. They're supposed to be easy. They call it a charity strike for a reason. So that's really the toughest thing that I want to get to. You mentioned Coleman Hawkins didn't have the best night, but he didn't have to, thankfully, and still got the win. That's a great problem to have when you are defeating a top 15 team in the country and your best player is only scoring 6 points, only going 2 for 11 from the field, having 4 assists. He did have 3 steals. He added to that nice steal party as well. But other players stepped up around him, like Gasson, like Doug McDaniel. And even when Brandon Hausen didn't have a great night from shooting from beyond the 3, he still found a way to get 8 points because he got 4 for 5 from the free throw line, especially a couple of those towards the end of the game. It's an interesting concept, what we're seeing from Kansas State. You saw an extra player come in. They got 9 on the bench this time around. We didn't see that. We only saw 8 for the last couple games. You got a little extra play from Uganda as well, just a little bit, not much. But there's a lot to still focus on what's next for this team, because even though we have multiple wins now, and we were talking about how they have to become, how do they become a tournament team? We were talking earlier about how they have to go 8-2 and 1-1 in Big 12 play, and they got to at least win one against Kansas and against Arizona. Well, guess what? Now they've won both. So what does that mean now for the future? What does that mean now for the rest of the season? We're going to break that down as we continue on this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. So what's it mean? Let's talk about it. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. Hey, for your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Big 12. Talk about everything in the Big 12 conference. I'm sure they're talking about the refs because the refs have been absolutely dreadful across the entire conference. Not this game, not just this game as well. 73-70, Kansas State takes care of Arizona. What is next on the docket? I'm here with Jeff Burkhart. You can find him on Twitter at Jeff_Burkhart. I guess I should say Twitter X now. You cannot find me on Twitter because my Twitter account is blocked right now. I've been hacked. So the best you can contact me is just leave a comment in the video description below. Twitter's having a very hard time with their efficiencies getting back to me on the contact department. They're as good as the Chiefs offensive line was on Sunday. Sorry, Jeff. Ooh. I didn't mean it, Jeff.
Give him a little bit more credit there.
I'm sorry. Let's get back to action here. Let's talk about the Kansas State taking down the Wildcats of Arizona 73-70. What a win. I can't believe it. I feel really good about this one yet again. And I had a feeling that they're going to lose at least one of these between Kansas and Arizona because it's a tough stretch, right? But they found a way to get both of them. Now they hit the road in another tough stretch. It's a Saturday-Monday matchup at BYU, at Utah. Although they're not some of the best teams in the conference, BYU is a tough team. Utah always is a tough play no matter what. And playing late like that in an easy back-to-back on a tough travel on a Saturday to Monday, when you're thinking high after beating 2 top 25 teams, this screams a potential trap kind of concept for Kansas State, who has struggled on the road. Although they figured it out their last road trip, have struggled on the road so far this season. How you feeling about BYU initial reaction right after this win?
Yeah, Arizona obviously went into Provo and handled BYU and ended up winning that game by double figures. And then Cincinnati just beat the brakes off of them just a couple of days ago. So the Cougars are obviously a team that's reeling here at the moment. They're looking to make sure kind of fortify their NCAA chances. So they're looking like, hey, we're coming home. We got to find a win. And they're in. And again, K-State on its face right now, when you're hosting a 13-11 team at your own gym, you got to win that game. So that's BYU fans probably, looking at that objectively are saying, we got to find a way to win this game. We got to break this little skid that we're on. And we got to make sure that we're on the right side of the bubble here come March. So I feel, though, good about Kansas State's chances here. Just, again, like I said, they find different ways to go about winning. I don't sweat and I'm going to echo a lot of the same points I did after after our guys beat Kansas the other day. There's trust. Guys understand responsibilities and roles right now, so I'm not going to be really dreading anything. I don't think there's anything that BYU does in particular that is all that alarming or distressing. Again, you really, more than anything else, just hope that the guys emotionally can. That's the big question now. You're on this crazy run. Can you keep putting it all back out on the line, knowing that the margin for error is small, and knowing that the end goal and all this, now that you've put yourself in position to be in position, as the expression goes, knowing that that's much more tangible now than it was just a few weeks ago. Are you going to be able to meet the moment? And this team has obviously done that now 6 consecutive times. Can they make it 7 on the road against a BYU team that's just, I mentioned Arizona having beaten them, but what, Arizona's the 13th ranked team in the country. So there's no shame in losing at a home game. But BYU, outside of that, though, 11-2 overall in Provo this season. So that'll be a tough out for Kansas State. And again, I know you mentioned the back-to-back road swing here, making the trip out to Utah. You like to come away with just one of those. I would be thrilled if they could get both. And I mean, at that point, then you're bumping yourself up to 9-6 in Big 12 play. We're talking about a team that's obviously not even that's getting a first-round bye in the Big 12 conference tournament. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this. And Utah's a team on the backside of that that's kind of floundering right now. And like I said, that's a team that doesn't alarm me really. Again, neither one of these teams really possess anything and have shown me anything to make me say I'm scared. The only thing that I'm really nervous of is the fact that again that lengthy losing streak that went so long, between winning road games, does that rear its head? Does this team all of a sudden, which has been so good at taking care of the ball during this winning streak, does the turnover bug bite them, and do they cough up 19 turnovers? Do they have another cold outing like this on top of that? Fortunately, again, while there have been some deficiencies in certain areas like tonight, 3-point shooting, free throw line, that didn't really come back to rear its head and bite Kansas State. When you do that on the road, though, you might not be as fortunate. So they're going to have some things they'll have to clean up here. But again, I like the fact that we get this game here on Tuesday. They'll have plenty of time to get rested up before they travel out to Utah for this very critical stretch here, because these are probably your 2 toughest remaining road tilts that you have here. I know Cincinnati, looking at Cincinnati and UCF, I know those are teams that might, depending on how Vegas looks at those games, they might be short favorites, but I would be surprised. But this back-to-back swing, this is your toughest road test. So I really do think there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. If Kansas State, if they can get through this with a split, good. If they can get through it undefeated, even better, because I think they'll be in that much better position to really, again, cement their at-large status for the NCAA tournament.
Drop your thoughts in the comment description below. What are we going to go on this road trip? We're going to go 2-0, 1-1, 0-2. I hope it's not the latter. Let me know your thoughts in the comment description below. BYU just came off a win, 73-69 against West Virginia tonight. They had a late and one to seal the win. Their freshman, Ego Demon, is it Demon? I don't know. Scored 16 points in the matchup. So, I mean, there's going to be some things to watch out. They're also 7-6 in conference. So this is a game that if Kansas State wins on Saturday, there is a potential chance, if a couple other things go the right way, that Kansas State could be tied for 5th in the Big 12 heading into Monday's matchup against Utah. If you win both of those, if you go 2-0, there's a chance that you could be one of the top 4 teams in the Big 12 heading into next week. That is a wild feeling, knowing that you started off, 1-6 in conference play, and now you have an opportunity to be in the top 4 if a couple things go right and you went out on this road trip. You would go 4-0 in your last 4 road games. That would be bizarre. That'd be fantastic. But to me, there is not a game on the rest of this schedule going into Big 12 conference play, including the game at home against Iowa State, that is not unbeatable. There's not a game that you were just going to say, yep, that's a sure thing loss. No way. The way that this team has been playing so far over the last really almost month now, which is awesome to say, Kansas State can beat anybody. And it's a really good feeling that we're at right now. And they're in a prime position to make a run for a March Madness bid. And if they continue this streak, we're going to be sooner or later, hopefully, Jeff, not talking about first four in and first four out. Hopefully, we're talking about maybe like a solid 10 or an 11 seed just solidified in the tournament. That's a chance now, too, after all these quad one wins.
Mm-hmm.
Got to see something from Keenan coming in here saying we can beat Utah. The game in BYU seems like a toss-up. I completely agree. That's exactly how I feel right now. Initially, before diving deep into thinking BYU, Utah is definitely the lesser of the two right now. If they can find a way to get past BYU and they don't have to have a track meet like they did against Kansas and this matchup right here, both Doug McDaniel, Coleman Hawkins, those guys were absolutely gassed yet again in this one. If they can find a way to not be gassed on the Saturday matchup so they can be fully recovered by Monday, I think they easily can take both the games on the road, Jeff. How about you?
And I know we talked about the where they sit currently. Joe Lunardi, in his most recent projection, had them. So there's the first four out, the next four out. K-State's in that third tier after that, the next four out. So again, we're, as they said, in position to be in position. That's going to get recycled a lot here.
And that's before this win tonight against the 13th ranked team. So yeah, that's
big time resume builder. Big time resume builder once again. And like I said, at this point, I don't think you need to worry about trying to rack up any more quote unquote quality wins. Take as many Q1 wins as you can get. But I think K-State's resume is going to be, comparatively to there's going to be teams that don't have as many quad one wins that are for sure in the field right now, that are probably pretty solidly 7, 8, 9 seeds. And just by the virtue of the fact that the Big 12 is so strong, once again, at the top, K-State's going to have more wins and that because they have more opportunities. So again, BYU definitely going to be the tougher out, no doubt about that one. But again, K-State's, they found ways to get it done. And again, I need to do a little bit deeper dive into the Cougs before I can confidently say what's the method, what's the best approach to that, how does K-State go about winning that one. But K-State, they played BYU to the wire last year in Provo. I remember there was a very critical a flagrant foul towards the end of that game that kind of swung things back to the Cougars, and they ended up winning that one with with some free throws late to kind of push the margin out and whatnot. But again, just that team last year was so spotty, so sporadic, and this team right now is playing like, again, a polished and finished product. So the way that this group is playing, I'll give them a chance against anybody on the
7 games left on the schedule. When we were at 10 a couple games ago, right before the Arizona State game, we said that they have to go 8-2 and then 1-1 in the Big 12 tourney. That's kind of how we were all feeling. Now that we got big wins against Kansas and Arizona, is it still 5-2, or do you think that there's a chance, even if you had a third loss and maybe go 4-3 the rest of the way, you're still possibly on a track for a first four out or first four in, I guess, a trip to Dayton?
I still think it's like 17 and just looking at that 17 and 14 record, and then even if you go 1-1 in Kansas City, 18-15, I'm not feeling particularly good about that. Yeah. Again, this is just kind of, unfortunately, the hole was so deep that you had to dig out of. You don't really have a whole lot of margin for error. So I still think 5-2 is kind of that benchmark. And hopefully now that they've made it through they've made it through the ringer, having beaten KU at home, having beaten Arizona, the best team in the conference, or at least they were going into today. Yep. You've made it through the ringer now, and hopefully now they can. I don't think that they've been playing tight or anything like that. They've been playing with confidence. You can very clearly see that, and then the guys there's very much a nothing to lose mentality, and I hope that helps them play a little bit more loose now, knowing that there might be a little bit more wiggle room, and you didn't drop one of those games you know, you didn't drop the Arizona State game. You didn't stub your toe at home against Kansas. You know, you've won all those. So you've given yourself the benefit of maybe one or two more losses with a chance to still get in it at an at-large. So, like I said, I'm not too worried about this team or its mentality and just the way that they've conducted themselves post game. They just, you know, it's just on to the next. They just keep, that's the refrain now, on to the next, on to the next. And Doug McDaniel coming in within the victory tunnel, keeps saying we're not done and all that. Like they're saying all the right things. They're doing all the right things out on the floor. Like it's hard to pick against this group right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think best case scenario obviously is to win out, no doubt, but to go 5-1 until you get to Iowa State, just to maybe have that loss kind of in your pocket if you need it. Obviously, you don't want to lose at home in the final game of the season, but if you can win out, you're going to have a nice seed in the Big 12 conference tourney. I mean, you might get a bye. You probably will have a bye in the conference tourney if you win out. But if you go 5-1 up to the Iowa State game and then either win or lose and then get one win in Kansas City, I think you're in great shape. You're in absolutely great shape. Jeff, where can everyone find you? What do you got going on coming up this week? And of course, you're going to be here joining me this Saturday when BYU takes on Kansas State for the post game.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter/X, Jeff _Burkhart. Just going to be doing my homework here this week and starting to look at some of the resumes and some of those squads here that K-State's in line with, the first four out, the next four out, just seeing how K-State's going to stack up and if who's the most palpable and realistic threat to potentially steal a bid, depending on how K-State continues to fare. If the Wildcats keep winning, I don't think we're going to have to sweat much of anything. But that's the big question: can they sustain this level of play for how long? But yeah, I'll be putting out some information about some of those teams. So just follow me on Twitter, and again, I'll be looking forward to hopping on with you doing this post game after BYU, and hopefully what is yet another Wildcat victory. Jerome Tang. Congrats to him once again, getting a great atmosphere in Bramlage Coliseum. We got a big snowstorm obviously coming that's going to be coming through here tonight, picking up win number 13 against a ranked opponent at home. He's 13-3 against ranked foes in Bramlage. It's just been a house of horrors for anybody who's come into that building with a number next to their name. So congrats to him and his squad, his coaches, for having, again, another tremendous scout. Did a great job on Caleb Love and so many of those playmakers for Arizona, just really putting the clamps down on them defensively, a team that scores it so well, holding them almost 13 points below their season average. Can't say enough good things about them and what this team continues to do. It's so much more fun to watch than where they were, like I said, just a few short weeks ago. So, like I said, just follow me on Twitter. I'll be putting out some info about all those squads, and I'll, like I said, looking forward to reconnecting with you here in just a couple of days, Christian. Looking forward to another Wildcat win, right?
I hope so. Yeah, maybe not so crazy, maybe not so cardiac like. I would be okay with that. But you know what? A win's a win. We'll make sure whatever happens. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And until then, this has been Locked On Kansas State.